The city was drowning in rain. Heavy drops lashed against the glass towers of Manhattan, turning the streets into rivers of shimmering reflections. Somewhere in the chaos stood Emma Williams, 7 months pregnant, clutching her coat tightly around her swollen belly. Her face was pale, wet, not just from the storm but from tears. Moments earlier she had been shoved out of her own home by the man she thought she knew best, her husband, Daniel Foster. At 35, Daniel was everything society admired. A millionaire real estate investor, tall, handsome, commanding in every boardroom. But behind closed doors, his charm had long turned into cruelty. "Emma, you don't belong here anymore." Daniel's voice had sliced through the night like a blade. His eyes, once warm, were cold and sharp. "I've given you enough. You and your baby will only drag me down. Vanessa is the future. You are the past." Emma had pleaded, her hands trembling on her belly. "Daniel, please don't do this. I'm carrying your child." He laughed bitterly. "Don't remind me. I never wanted this. And let's not forget, I've done this before. My first wife begged too, but she didn't stop me. Neither will you." His words hit harder than the rain. Emma had always known about Daniel's past marriage, but she never thought she would be treated the same way. She believed love could change a man. Now, standing in the downpour, she realized she had been nothing but a temporary chapter in his endless hunger for power and pleasure. The mansion door slammed shut behind her. She was alone. The rain plastered her hair to her cheeks as she staggered down the sidewalk. Each step was agony. The baby shifted inside her as if sensing the storm raging in its mother's heart. Emma whispered through sobs, "Don't worry, little one. Mommy's here. I won't give up." But her strength was fading. As she reached the glowing entrance of the Royal Heights Hotel, laughter spilled from the grand hall. Inside, Daniel was already hosting a gala, his mistress Vanessa Moore on his arm. The 24-year-old model was radiant in a crimson gown, basking in the spotlight that once belonged to Emma. Guests toasted to Daniel's success, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, that his pregnant wife had been cast out into the night. Emma pressed a trembling hand against her belly, her vision blurred by tears and rain. The humiliation burned. She wanted to scream, to run into that ballroom and expose Daniel's cruelty. But her body was too weak, her spirit too fractured. She turned away, stepping off the curb, her thoughts a swirl of despair. Then came the blinding headlights. A black luxury car skidded on the slick pavement, tires screeched. Emma froze, like a deer caught in the glare. The horn blasted through the storm, but it was too late. The impact threw her to the ground. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and merciless. She gasped, clutching her stomach. Her ears rang with the sound of her own scream. Around her, voices rose in shock. People gathered, whispering, pointing, but no one moved forward. Not even Daniel, who had stepped outside just in time to see her crumpled on the street. For one chilling moment, his eyes met hers, cold, empty, uncaring. Emma's vision dimmed. Her lips trembled around a single thought: my baby. And then, through the haze of rain and blood, a tall figure rushed toward her, pushing through the crowd. Strong arms lifted her gently off the ground. A voice, deep and urgent, said, "Stay with me. I won't let you go." Emma's world went dark, never knowing her life was about to change forever. The shrill wail of ambulance sirens pierced the storm as Emma's body was lifted onto a stretcher. Her clothes were soaked with rain and blood, her breath shallow, her eyelids fluttering. The stranger who had carried her from the street never let go of her hand, even as the paramedics swarmed around. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice steady but his eyes burning with urgency. "You're not alone anymore. Do you hear me?" Emma's lips moved faintly, her voice barely a whisper. "My baby." The paramedics exchanged uneasy glances. "She's in preterm labor," one of them muttered. "Get her to St. Mary's now." The ambulance doors slammed shut. Red and blue lights reflected off the puddles as the vehicle sped through the city. The stranger, Alexander Carter, kept his hand locked in Emma's, his expensive suit ruined, streaked with mud and crimson. Yet he didn't care. He had once lost everything that mattered in a car accident. Tonight, he refused to let fate repeat itself. At the hospital, chaos erupted. Doctors and nurses rushed Emma into the maternity ward. The words "emergency C-section" echoed down the sterile white corridors. Emma's eyes opened once more, panic filling them as she reached for Alexander. "Please, don't let them take my baby away." Alexander leaned close, his voice low and reassuring. No one is taking him. I'll be right here. You fight for him, and I'll fight for you both. The doors swung shut, leaving Alexander outside, pacing like a caged lion. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his fists clenched. Memories flooded back. His wife's last words before her car spun out of control. The infant he never got to hold. He swallowed the grief, forcing it down. Tonight he would not fail. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a nurse rushed past with an incubator. Inside, wrapped in tubes and wires, lay a tiny, fragile baby boy. His chest rose with trembling breaths, each one a miracle and a risk. Alexander froze. Something inside him cracked open. This wasn't just Emma's fight anymore. It was his too. Moments later, the doctor emerged, sweat glistening on his brow. The mother survived the surgery, but she's weak. She'll need rest. The baby is premature, only 7 months, but alive. We'll keep him in the NICU. It's critical. Relief crashed over Alexander, but it was laced with rage. He had seen Daniel outside the hotel, watching his pregnant wife hit by a car, doing nothing. No husband, no father, no man should ever behave that way. Inside the hospital room, Emma lay pale against the sheets, her hair damp with sweat, tubes connected to her arms. Her eyes fluttered open when she felt a hand brush against hers. She saw Alexander at her side, not Daniel. "Where is he?" she croaked, her voice hoarse. "Your son is alive," Alexander said softly. "He's fighting, just like you. And I swear to you, I will not let him be alone." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. She had expected silence, abandonment, maybe even death. Instead, a stranger was here, holding her hand with a sincerity she hadn't felt in years. But before she could speak again, the door opened. Daniel stood there, his tuxedo immaculate, Vanessa lingering behind him with a smug smile. His eyes swept the room, not with concern, but with irritation. "So this is where you ended up," Daniel muttered, his voice dripping disdain. "Pathetic. You couldn't even handle being a wife, and now you can't even handle being a mother." Emma's heart clenched. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but her body was too weak. Then Alexander rose slowly from his chair, his tall frame towering over Daniel. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of steel. "She doesn't need you anymore," Alexander said. "From this moment forward, she is under my protection." Daniel's eyes narrowed, realizing for the first time that he might have just lost everything. Not only his wife, but also control over a future he thought was his. The hospital air was thick with tension. Daniel's mocking words still hung in the sterile room, striking Emma like knives. She turned her face away, unable to look at the man who had abandoned her when she needed him most. Her weak body trembled, but her spirit fought to stay alive, for her baby. Daniel smirked, adjusting the cuff of his tuxedo as if he were merely bored. "You should have known better, Emma. I told you I don't want this child. Vanessa and I, we have our future planned. You're nothing but a mistake I regret." Vanessa stepped closer, her lips curling in a cruel smile. "Don't waste your energy on her, Daniel. She's just clinging on because she has nothing else. Look at her, pathetic, hooked up to wires." She leaned against Daniel possessively, the crimson fabric of her dress glowing under the fluorescent light. Emma's chest heaved. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not this time," she whispered, her voice fragile but firm. "One day, you'll regret this." Alexander, who had been silent, took a step forward. His tall frame cast a shadow across Daniel. His voice was steady, laced with quiet fury. "I saw her lying in the street tonight, bleeding and broken, and I saw you standing there, doing nothing. A man who abandons his pregnant wife is no man at all." Daniel's smug expression faltered, but only for a second. "Stay out of this. This is my family matter." "Family?" Alexander's eyes flashed. "You forfeited that word the moment you left her to die. From now on, Emma and her child are no longer yours." The words struck like a thunderclap. For the first time, Emma felt a flicker of safety. Someone had stood up for her when she could not. But Daniel wasn't finished. He sneered and pulled out his phone. "You think you can humiliate me, Emma? Let me show you something." With a swipe, he revealed photos. Him and Vanessa at the gala, sipping champagne, smiling beneath chandeliers. The images had already been posted online by gossip blogs. The headlines were brutal. "Millionaire Daniel Foster debuts stunning model girlfriend at gala." Where was his pregnant wife? Emma's heart shattered as she realized the betrayal wasn't private, it was public. Everyone now knew she had been discarded like trash. Her tears finally fell, hot trails down her pale cheeks. Her hands clutched the blanket tightly, her knuckles white. Shame, grief, and rage swirled inside her fragile body. Alexander's jaw tightened as he saw the headlines. "You humiliate her in front of the entire city? You will pay for this." Daniel laughed coldly. "She's already paid, with her dignity, with her future. By tomorrow, everyone will forget her, and I'll be the one remembered." Emma's vision blurred again, but not from weakness, this time from fury. Somewhere deep inside, a fire ignited. The humiliation was unbearable, but it would not be the end. She whispered, barely audible, "No, I won't be forgotten." Vanessa scoffed. "Save your strength, sweetheart. You'll need it in court, when Daniel divorces you and takes everything." The door burst open. A nurse rushed in, alarmed. "We need to keep this room quiet. The baby's condition is unstable. Too much stress is dangerous for both of them." Daniel gave one last disdainful look before storming out with Vanessa. Their laughter echoed down the hallway, leaving Emma trembling in silence. Alexander sat down beside her, gently taking her hand. "Emma," he said softly, "they think this is your end. But it's only the beginning. I will help you rise. You and your son will not suffer alone." Emma closed her eyes, exhausted, but clinging to his words like a lifeline. And in that moment, as the monitors beeped steadily, Emma vowed silently, if Daniel had chosen betrayal under the spotlight, she would one day return to reclaim her dignity in the same spotlight. The days after the accident bled together in a haze of antiseptic smells, beeping monitors, and whispered footsteps. Emma lay in her hospital bed, pale and weak, her body stitched and scarred from the emergency surgery. Every movement sent lightning bolts of pain shooting through her abdomen, but none of it compared to the ache in her heart. Her baby boy was alive, but fragile. She had only seen him through the clear glass of the incubator, his tiny chest rising and falling with the help of tubes and machines. The sight of his delicate body broke her, but it also gave her strength. She whispered prayers each night, promising him that she would survive, that she would fight for him no matter what. Still, when the room was quiet and the lights dimmed, the torment inside her grew unbearable. The betrayal replayed in her mind. Daniel's cold words, Vanessa's smirk, the cruel headlines splashed across the internet. She had given her soul to a man who treated her as disposable. Now the whole world knew. Nurses tried to encourage her. "You're healing well," one said gently. "Your son is stronger each day." Emma nodded, but inside she felt empty. Healing the body was one thing. Healing the heart was another. Alexander visited every morning, his presence steady and unyielding. He brought her warm meals, soft blankets, even books to distract her. But most of all, he brought reassurance. He checked on the baby tirelessly, speaking to the doctors with the authority of a man used to getting answers. One evening, as the rain tapped against the hospital windows, Alexander sat at her bedside. "Emma, I know what betrayal feels like," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to lose the people you love most, but I also know what it means to rise again. You can't let them break you." Emma's lips trembled. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You are," Alexander said firmly. "You just don't see it yet. But I do. And soon the world will." His words touched something deep inside her, but fear still gripped her heart. She was torn between gratitude for this stranger's kindness and terror of trusting again. After all, trust had nearly destroyed her. At night, Emma cried silently into her pillow. She cried for the love she lost, the humiliation she endured, the uncertain future of her child. No one saw the way her body shook with sobs, or how she bit her lip until it bled to keep the cries from waking the nurses. But the world outside was not as silent. News of Daniel's betrayal spread like wildfire. Tabloids feasted on the story. The pregnant wife left behind, the glamorous mistress, the millionaire's cold indifference. Social media erupted with outrage. Some pitied Emma, others mocked her weakness, but Daniel's carefully built image began to crack. One night, Emma overheard two nurses whispering outside her door. "Did you see the article? People are demanding Daniel step down from his company. Investors are panicking." Emma closed her eyes. A flicker of justice sparked, but it wasn't enough to erase the ache. What she wanted was not just pity from strangers. What she wanted was dignity, and that could only be reclaimed by her own strength. Days turned into weeks. Her body slowly healed, and her baby gained weight in the NICU. Emma began sitting up longer, walking down the corridor with shaky steps. Each time she passed the incubator, she pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "You are my reason." One morning, Alexander entered with a folder in hand. His eyes were intense, filled with determination. "Emma," he said, placing the folder on her lap, "it's time you saw the truth about Daniel Foster. Everything he's been hiding, every secret, has to come to light." Emma's fingers trembled as she reached for the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, proof that Daniel's betrayal went deeper than she ever imagined. Her heart pounded as she realized Daniel's affair was only the beginning of a much darker web of lies. Emma's hands trembled as she opened the folder Alexander had placed before her. The paper smelled faintly of ink and secrets, and her pulse quickened with each page she turned. At first, the documents seemed like ordinary financial records, investment portfolios, contracts, property deeds. But the deeper she looked, the uglier the truth became. Her husband's wealth, the empire he flaunted so proudly, was built on corruption. "Daniel didn't just leave you," Alexander said in a low voice. "He's been living a lie for years." Emma swallowed hard, scanning a bank statement with numbers so large they blurred her vision. "Offshore accounts? What is this?" "Money laundering," Alexander replied. His voice carried no hesitation. "He's been funneling funds through shell companies, bribes, stolen deals, fraudulent mergers, and it doesn't stop there." Emma's chest tightened. Her mind raced back to their early years of marriage, lavish vacations, designer gifts, the penthouse overlooking Central Park. She had thought it was success. Now she realized it was theft disguised as luxury. Alexander leaned closer. "Do you remember how Daniel always said he worked late? How he claimed every business trip was critical?" Emma nodded faintly, her throat dry. "He wasn't just with Vanessa. There were others, other women, other alliances. He used them the way he used you, to climb higher." Her stomach turned. Betrayal was one thing. To know her entire life had been funded by deceit was unbearable. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. "Because you need to understand," Alexander said firmly. "Daniel isn't just a cruel husband. He's dangerous. If these documents go public, he could lose everything. That's why he will do anything to silence you." Emma's blood ran cold. For a moment, the hospital room felt smaller, suffocating. Her baby's faint cries from the NICU down the hall seemed like a distant echo of the life she had to protect. She clenched the papers with trembling fingers. "If I expose him, he'll come after me." Alexander's eyes softened, but his tone remained resolute. "That's why you won't be alone. I've already arranged protection. Lawyers, security. But the choice is yours, Emma. Do you stay silent, or do you take back your life?" Her heart pounded in her chest. Silence meant safety, but also humiliation and a lifetime of shadows. Speaking out meant danger, but also justice. Tears welled in her eyes as memories flashed. Daniel laughing with Vanessa, Daniel denying their baby, Daniel watching as she lay bleeding in the street. Rage began to rise, burning away the fear. "I won't stay silent," Emma whispered. "Not anymore. He took everything from me. He tried to take my child, but he will not take my voice." Alexander nodded, a faint flicker of approval in his eyes. "Good. Then we move forward. Carefully, but decisively." But even as he spoke, Emma noticed something strange in the documents. A photograph paper-clipped to one of the contracts. Her breath caught. It was a picture of Daniel at a private party, standing beside powerful men she recognized from the news. Politicians, CEOs, men who moved entire markets with a single decision. And there, in the corner of the image, was Vanessa, smiling, her hand intertwined with Daniel's. Emma's voice shook. "He's not just cheating. He's building something bigger, something dangerous." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Yes, and that's why you must be prepared, because the moment he realizes you've seen this, he'll stop at nothing to destroy you." Emma's grip on the folder tightened until her knuckles turned white. Fear gnawed at her, but beneath it burned determination. She had survived betrayal, a car accident, even near death. She would survive this too. But she didn't know that even as she vowed to fight, Daniel was already planning his next move. A strike that would hit Emma where it hurt most. Her newborn child. The sterile halls of St. Mary's buzzed with the quiet hum of machines, the shuffle of nurses' shoes, and the faint cries of newborns. Emma sat in a wheelchair, her body still frail from surgery. Every day she visited the NICU, pressing her palm against the glass where her tiny son lay fighting for his life. She whispered to him each time, "Mommy's here. You're not alone. We'll get through this together." But on this morning, something felt wrong. As she wheeled closer, she noticed nurses clustered near the incubator, their faces tense. Emma's heart seized. "What's happening?" she demanded, her voice cracking. A nurse turned, her expression cautious. "Mrs. Foster, your husband was here." Emma froze. "Daniel?" The nurse nodded. "He said he was the father. He tried to sign documents to move the baby into private care under his authority, but we refused without your consent. Security escorted him out." Emma's stomach dropped, bile rising in her throat. Daniel hadn't visited once during her darkest nights. Now suddenly he wanted access. Not out of love, out of control. She clutched her robe tighter around her trembling body. "My baby is not safe, is he?" The nurse hesitated. "We're increasing security, but you should know, men like him don't give up easily." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned her gaze back to the incubator. Her son's tiny chest rose and fell, each breath fragile but determined. "Over my dead body?" she whispered fiercely. Later that day, Alexander arrived. His face hardened as Emma relayed what happened. "I told you," he said grimly. "Daniel won't stop. He sees your child as leverage. If he can control the boy, he can control you." Emma's hands balled into fists. "He'll never touch my son. Never." Alexander placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'll double the guards. But Emma, you must prepare yourself. He doesn't just want the child. He wants to erase you. If you're not strong, he will succeed." Emma nodded, her jaw set, though fear gnawed at her insides. She had survived betrayal and near death, but the thought of losing her baby shook her to her core. That night, when the ward had grown quiet, Emma drifted into a restless sleep. But she awoke to commotion, the sharp voices of security, the sound of hurried footsteps. She pulled herself from bed, wincing, and hobbled toward the NICU. There, through the glass, she saw Daniel. His hands pressed against the incubator, his face twisted with rage. 2 guards restrained him as he shouted, "That child is mine. You think you can steal him from me? You think you can erase me?" Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her legs nearly buckled. She wanted to scream, to claw her way into the room, but Alexander appeared at her side, steadying her. Daniel's eyes found hers through the chaos. His voice dropped, low and venomous. "You'll regret this, Emma. You and that bastard child. You can't hide him from me forever." The guards dragged him out, his threats echoing down the corridor. Emma collapsed against Alexander, her body shaking. "Why?" she sobbed. "Why can't he just let us go?" Alexander's eyes darkened. "Because men like Daniel don't love. They possess, and if you don't fight back, he will haunt you forever." Emma looked through the glass at her son, her vision blurred with tears. She pressed her palm against the window, whispering through clenched teeth, "I will fight. For him. For us. Even if it kills me." But neither Emma nor Alexander realized that Daniel had already taken the first step of his revenge, by calling someone powerful enough to make both mother and child disappear. The night after Daniel's outburst at the hospital, Emma barely slept. Every creak in the hallway made her heart race. She lay awake, clutching the thin blanket against her chest, staring at the NICU monitor that broadcasted her baby's fragile heartbeat. Each tiny blip was a lifeline, but also a reminder of how easily Daniel could snatch it away. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel sat in the penthouse suite of a luxury hotel. A glass of scotch rested in his hand, but it did nothing to calm the fury boiling inside him. The city's skyline glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, but all he saw was humiliation. Emma had survived when she should have been erased. Worse, she had found a new protector, a man Daniel recognized all too well. Alexander Carter. Carter. Daniel spat the name like poison. Always the hero, always the one stealing what's mine. Vanessa lounged on the velvet sofa behind him, scrolling through her phone. Her smile smug. "You're letting them win, darling. The internet is painting you as the villain. Investors are nervous. Your empire is cracking." Daniel slammed his glass down, shards scattering across the marble table. "I will not lose. Not to Emma. Not to Carter." He reached for his phone and dialed a number stored under no name, just a single black star. The line clicked after one ring. A voice, smooth and menacing, answered. "Mr. Foster, I wondered when you'd call." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I need a problem taken care of. Permanently." The voice chuckled softly. And this problem wears a hospital gown, doesn't she? With a child that shouldn't exist? Daniel's silence was answer enough. Consider it done, the man said, but you understand the cost. Once we move, there's no undoing it. Daniel's eyes darkened. Do it. Erase her. Erase the child. Carter won't even know what happened until it's too late. When he ended the call, Vanessa's eyes glittered with a mixture of admiration and fear. Are you sure about this? Killing her? Killing the baby? It's risky. If Carter finds out, Daniel cut her off with a cold smile. Carter is a man drowning in his own past. He saved her out of guilt. But guilt won't protect her forever. Money, power, and fear, that's what rules the world. And those still belong to me. Back at the hospital, Emma tried to distract herself by reading one of the books Alexander had brought. But the words blurred. Her thoughts spun with images of Daniel's face twisted with rage, his threats echoing in her ears. She hugged herself, whispering, "Please, just let us be." Alexander entered quietly, carrying coffee. His presence filled the room with a strength Emma desperately needed. "How's our little fighter?" he asked, glancing at the monitor. Emma smiled faintly. "Still breathing, still fighting." Alexander pulled a chair beside her. "So must you. Daniel won't stop, and he's more dangerous than you realize." Emma turned to him, her voice breaking. "Then how do we beat him? He's powerful, he's ruthless. I'm just me." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes steady. "You're not just you. You're a mother. That's stronger than any empire he can buy. But you must be ready, Emma. Ready for a war." For the first time, she didn't shrink from the word. She nodded. "Then I'll fight. For my son. For us." But as she spoke, a figure in a dark coat slipped through the hospital's back entrance. The stranger moved with purpose, a phone pressed to his ear. "Target located," he whispered. "The mother and child won't survive the night." The hospital at night was a strange place, too quiet, almost unnatural. The hum of machines and the occasional squeak of rubber soles on linoleum were the only sounds. Most patients slept, lost in medicated dreams. But Emma lay awake, her body tense, her instincts screaming. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her son's monitor beeped steadily in the NICU, a lullaby of survival. Emma had insisted on moving her bed closer to the glass wall so she could see him, watch him breathe. Every rise and fall of his chest anchored her in a world that otherwise felt like it was crumbling. But tonight, shadows stretched longer than usual. Down the hall, a man in a dark coat slipped past the nurse's station. His steps were careful, deliberate. He carried a clipboard tucked under one arm and wore a surgical mask, blending in just enough to look official, until you looked too closely. Emma saw him first. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the figure hovering near the NICU door. Her stomach tightened. Something about him felt wrong, too stiff, too cautious. Her voice cracked the silence. "Excuse me, who are you?" The man froze, then slowly turned toward her. His eyes, sharp and cold, met hers above the mask. For a split second, neither moved. Then he reached for the NICU keypad. "No," Emma screamed, her voice raw. She tried to push herself out of bed, pain tearing through her stitches. "Stay away from my baby." The alarm in her voice jolted the night staff. A nurse rushed from the far end of the hall, but the man shoved her aside, slamming his hand against the keypad again. The door beeped. Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She stumbled forward, clutching her abdomen, dragging herself toward the glass. Her son's tiny body was inches away, helpless inside the incubator. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps thundered down the hall. Alexander appeared, his coat unbuttoned, his expression fierce. "Step away from that door." The intruder turned, pulling a knife from inside his coat. The blade glinted under the fluorescent lights. Nurses screamed. Alexander didn't flinch. "You think you can touch them?" Alexander's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with fury. "You'll go through me first." The man lunged. Alexander grabbed his wrist mid-air, the two of them crashing against the wall. The knife clattered to the floor. Emma gasped, clutching the glass, powerless but desperate. Security burst onto the scene seconds later, wrestling the intruder down, cuffing his hands behind his back. The man snarled, his voice dripping venom. "This isn't over. He'll have her. The baby, too. You can't hide forever." Emma collapsed against the wall, her body trembling uncontrollably. Alexander rushed to her side, steadying her before she fell. His voice softened. "It's all right. He didn't touch him. Your son is safe." But Emma shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you see? Daniel sent him. He won't stop coming until we're gone." Alexander looked back at the intruder being dragged away, then returned his gaze to Emma. His jaw tightened. "Then we'll stop him first. On my terms, not his." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Alexander leaned close, his words a whisper only for her. "Tomorrow, you and your son leave this hospital. I'll take you somewhere he'll never reach." Emma's pulse raced, torn between terror and a spark of hope. Could they really escape Daniel's grip? But as Alexander spoke, Daniel was already holding a press conference, smiling for cameras, spinning his betrayal into a story that painted Emma as unstable and unfit to raise a child. The morning after the assassination attempt, Emma thought she had seen the worst Daniel could do. But she was wrong. While she sat in her hospital bed, exhausted but holding on to the fragile comfort that her baby was still alive, the world outside was being fed a new story, a story written and controlled by Daniel Foster. Every television in the hospital lobby blared with the same breaking headline: "Millionaire Daniel Foster speaks out. Estranged wife unstable, baby's future at risk." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she watched the screen from her wheelchair. There he was, her husband, standing tall at a press conference, his tuxedo perfectly pressed, his smile calculated. Cameras flashed as he played the role of the grieving, misunderstood man. "My heart aches for Emma," Daniel began, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "But the truth is, my wife has been struggling mentally for months. She has refused help, isolated herself, and endangered our unborn child in the process. I had no choice but to step away, for the safety of our family." Emma's nails dug into the armrests of her chair. Her mouth went dry. He was turning the world against her. Daniel continued, feigning a sigh. "Now that the child is born prematurely, my only concern is his well-being. I'm prepared to fight for full custody to ensure he grows up in a stable, loving environment." The crowd of reporters erupted with questions. One shouted, "Mr. Foster, are you suggesting your wife is unfit to be a mother?" Daniel lowered his gaze, shaking his head solemnly. "I'm saying I love my son too much to let him be raised in chaos. That's all." Vanessa appeared at his side, placing a sympathetic hand on his arm, her expression carefully composed for the cameras. She looked every bit the supportive partner, the future stepmother the tabloids would devour. Emma's chest tightened. She could almost hear the whispers already. Unstable wife, poor millionaire husband, the perfect new couple stepping in to save the child. Her tears burned hot, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the nurses who exchanged worried glances at the screen. She wheeled herself back to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. Moments later, Alexander walked in. His jaw was clenched, his phone buzzing non-stop with updates from the media storm. He muted it and placed it on the table. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Daniel's not just fighting you in court. He's fighting you in the public eye. He wants to destroy your credibility before you even step into a courtroom." Emma shook her head, her voice trembling. "He's calling me insane. He's making me look like I don't deserve my baby." Alexander knelt beside her, his eyes locking with hers. "Then we fight back. Not with lies, but with truth. You survived a car accident. You were abandoned, pregnant and alone, while he paraded a mistress at a gala. The world needs to see that." Emma swallowed hard. "But who will believe me? He has the money, the lawyers, the press in his pocket. No." Alexander cut her off. His voice grew firm. "You're not just anything. You are the mother of his child, and you have me. Together, we'll make them listen." Emma's heart pounded. For the first time, the despair inside her was pierced by a sliver of hope. But that fragile hope was shattered seconds later when a nurse burst into the room, panic etched across her face. "It's the baby," she gasped. "His breathing has dropped. He's crashing. We need you now." Emma's world tilted. Her body went cold, her hands trembling violently. And as alarms blared through the NICU, Emma realized Daniel's lies might not be the only threat. Her baby was fighting for his life again. The shrill sound of alarms shattered the fragile calm of the hospital. Emma's heart nearly stopped as red lights flashed above the NICU doors. Nurses and doctors rushed past her, their voices clipped with urgency. "Respiratory failure. Get the ventilator ready." Emma's wheelchair jolted as she tried to push herself forward, but Alexander was already behind her, wheeling her toward the glass wall. On the other side, her tiny son lay motionless, his fragile chest barely rising. Tubes snaked into his nose and mouth, his skin pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Emma's throat closed. "No, no, please, he can't leave me. Not now." Her voice cracked, raw with terror. A doctor appeared at her side, his expression grim but steady. "Mrs. Foster, your son is in critical distress. We're doing everything we can, but you need to prepare yourself. Premature babies sometimes." He trailed off, unwilling to finish. Emma's hands shot out, gripping the doctor's sleeve with desperate strength. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. That baby is all I have. He has to live. He has to." The doctor nodded, then rushed back inside. Emma's tears blurred her vision as she pressed her hand against the glass, whispering fiercely, "You fight, little one. Mommy's right here. Don't you dare give up." Alexander placed a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her. His voice was low, steady, but she could hear the strain beneath it. "He's strong, Emma. He has your fire. Don't forget that." Minutes felt like hours. The steady hum of the ventilator filled the silence, punctuated by the beeping of monitors that rose and fell like a cruel symphony. Emma's nails dug into her palms until her knuckles turned white. She prayed, pleaded, begged, anything to keep her child tethered to this world. Finally, the alarms dulled. The lead nurse emerged, pulling off her gloves, her face weary. "He's stable, for now. The ventilator is helping. But his lungs are fragile. Every hour will matter. He needs round-the-clock care." Emma sagged back in her chair, sobs shaking her body. Relief flooded her veins, but it was fragile, temporary. She knew one wrong turn could still steal him away. She turned to Alexander, her eyes swollen with tears. "I can't lose him. If I lose him, I lose myself." Alexander crouched in front of her, his gaze unflinching. "Then we don't let that happen. You and I, we stand guard. No one touches him. Not Daniel, not his men, not fate itself." Emma searched his face, and for the first time she saw not just a protector but something more. A man who had once lost everything and refused to let history repeat itself. A man who would fight beside her, no matter the cost. But even as relief washed over her, dread lingered. She remembered the assassin's words, "This isn't over," and Daniel's threat to take the baby. The thought of him trying again made her stomach twist. She leaned closer to the glass, whispering softly, "You're Carter now, not Foster. You'll grow strong, and one day you'll know you weren't abandoned. You were chosen." Alexander heard her, his brows lifting slightly, but he didn't correct her. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently, letting her words stand. For a brief moment, Emma felt something new flicker inside her. Hope. But the moment shattered when Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "It's Daniel," he said grimly. "He's filing for emergency custody. He's claiming you're unfit, and he has the court hearing set for tomorrow." Emma's blood turned to ice. Tomorrow. So soon. As the monitor beside her baby beeped steadily, Emma realized she wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. She was about to fight for the right to keep him. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and cold marble, a place where fortunes and futures were decided with the stroke of a gavel. Emma sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands trembling in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress Alexander had arranged for her, elegant yet modest. Her hair, though pulled back neatly, still framed a face marked by exhaustion. Every beat of her heart whispered the same mantra, "I must keep my son." Alexander sat beside her, his presence steady, his hand briefly brushing hers under the table. "Remember," he whispered, "this is not just about the law. This is about truth. Don't let his lies break you." Across the room, Daniel entered with Vanessa at his side, both radiating confidence. Daniel's tailored suit gleamed, his expression carefully composed to resemble a wronged man seeking justice. Vanessa clutched his arm, her lips painted in a smile that looked rehearsed. Reporters lined the back of the courtroom, pens scratching furiously, cameras snapping whenever Daniel shifted in his seat. The world was watching. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, took her seat. "We are here to hear the case of Daniel Foster versus Emma Foster regarding emergency custody of the child." Daniel's lawyer rose first, a tall man with a silver tie. His voice carried smooth authority. "Your Honor, my client seeks custody not out of malice but necessity. Mrs. Foster has demonstrated instability. She wandered the streets at night, in late pregnancy, endangering herself and the child. She has no income, no home, no ability to provide the stability this child needs. Emma's nails dug into her palms. Every word twisted reality into a weapon. She wanted to shout, to scream, but Alexander placed a steadying hand on her arm. The lawyer continued, his tone dripping with false concern. Mr. Foster, on the other hand, can provide a loving home, financial stability, and a nurturing environment. He has moved past marital difficulties and stands ready to give his son the future he deserves. Emma's chest burned. Loving home? Nurturing? She pictured Vanessa's smirk, Daniel's indifference as she bled in the street, his refusal to even acknowledge their son. When it was her turn, her lawyer, a woman with sharp features and fire in her eyes, stood tall. Your Honor, let us not be swayed by theatrics. Mrs. Foster nearly lost her life in a car accident after being thrown out of her home while 7 months pregnant. Mr. Foster abandoned her, attended a gala with his mistress, and made no attempt to support her during the birth of their child. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled faster. Emma's lawyer held up a photograph. Daniel and Vanessa at the gala, champagne glasses raised, the same night Emma was hit by a car. The image drew a collective gasp. And now, the lawyer continued, her voice sharp, Mr. Foster wishes to claim custody, not out of love, but control. This is not about the child's welfare. This is about power. The judge's eyes narrowed, scanning the photo. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his mask of confidence cracking for the briefest moment. Emma's lawyer turned toward her. Mrs. Foster, please tell the court what happened that night. Emma rose slowly, her legs shaky. Her voice trembled at first, but each word grew stronger. She told them everything. Daniel's cruel words, the slammed door, the rain soaking her as she stumbled through the streets, the blinding headlights, the impact, the desperate hours in the hospital, and the child born too soon. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke, but her voice did not break. I may not have millions, I may not have mansions, but I have love, and I will give my son every ounce of strength I have left. That is more than Daniel Foster has ever given him. The room fell silent. Even the reporters paused, their pens hovering midair. But then, Daniel's lawyer rose again, a smug smile tugging at his lips. Your Honor, he said smoothly, while Mrs. Foster's story is emotional, we have new evidence that paints a very different picture. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope, sliding it across to the judge. Emma's stomach dropped as she realized Daniel wasn't just fighting with lies, he was about to unleash something far more dangerous. The judge slit open the sealed envelope with a silver letter opener, pulling out a stack of papers and glossy photographs. Her brows furrowed as she skimmed the contents, her sharp eyes narrowing further with every page. The room fell silent, everyone waiting, breaths held. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his lips curling into a smug smile. Vanessa gripped his arm, her eyes glittering with triumph. Finally, the judge looked up. Mr. Foster's legal team has submitted psychiatric evaluations and hospital reports suggesting that Mrs. Foster has a documented history of mental instability. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Emma's knees nearly buckled beneath her. What? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The opposing lawyer seized the moment. Your Honor, these documents show that Mrs. May Foster was treated for anxiety and depression in her early 20s. While we sympathize with her struggles, it is undeniable that these conditions raise concerns about her ability to care for an infant, especially one born prematurely. Emma's heart pounded in her ears. She remembered those years. College, working 2 jobs, collapsing under pressure. Yes, she had sought help. She had gone to therapy. She had been brave enough to face her demons. And now Daniel was twisting that into a weapon. No, she whispered, louder this time. That was years ago. I got help. I got better. That has nothing to do with my son. But Daniel's lawyer was relentless. And yet, her instability is evident even now. Let us recall, she was found wandering the streets alone in the middle of the night while heavily pregnant. That recklessness led to the accident that endangered both her and the child. Is that the behavior of a fit mother? Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicking. Emma's skin crawled as she felt the narrative slipping away again. Her lawyer shot up, fire blazing in her eyes. Objection. Mrs. Foster sought medical help in her past. That does not equate to unfitness. If anything, it proves she had the courage to face her struggles. And as for the accident, she was thrown out of her home by Mr. Foster himself. She was abandoned, not reckless. The judge raised a hand to quiet the clash. Her gaze returned to Emma. Mrs. Foster, is it true you received psychiatric treatment in your early 20s? Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to shield herself, but lying would only destroy her credibility. She lifted her chin, voice trembling but honest. Yes, Your Honor. I was treated for anxiety and depression after a difficult period in my life. I sought therapy, I took medication, and I recovered. That experience made me stronger. It does not make me unfit to love or raise my son. The room buzzed with murmurs. Some reporters nodded, sympathetic. Others smirked, already drafting cruel headlines. Daniel's lawyer pressed further, his tone dripping with feigned concern. And yet, Mrs. Foster, even now you are under immense stress. Your child is in critical condition. How long before your fragile state overwhelms you again? This court cannot gamble with a child's future. Emma's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to collapse. She gripped the edge of the witness stand, her voice breaking but fierce. I am not fragile. I am a mother. And every mother knows, when it comes to your child, you find strength you never knew you had. The courtroom erupted in whispers again. The judge rapped her gavel once, restoring order, though her eyes lingered on Emma a moment longer. But before Emma could breathe, Daniel's lawyer smirked and pulled out one final sheet of paper. Your Honor, he said smoothly, beyond mental health, there's another matter. We have reason to believe that Mrs. Foster's child may not be Mr. Foster's biological son. The words detonated like a bomb. Gasps, shouts, and camera flashes filled the courtroom. Emma staggered, her breath stolen, and as Daniel's smug smile widened, Emma realized her husband's cruelty had reached an unimaginable new low. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The child may not be Mr. Foster's biological son. For a moment, Emma couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred, her knees weakened, and she gripped the wooden railing to keep from collapsing. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters shouting questions, camera flashes strobing like lightning, spectators gasping. Daniel's lawyer held up a sleek folder, waving it with theatrical flourish. Inside this file is a preliminary DNA test conducted by a private laboratory. The results, Your Honor, indicate that there is a 99% likelihood that the child is not biologically Mr. Foster's. The judge raised her hand sharply. Order in the court! Her gavel slammed once, but the tension refused to die. Her eyes narrowed on Daniel's lawyer. You'd better have evidence to back this outrageous claim. The lawyer placed the folder on the judge's desk with deliberate confidence. It's all here, Your Honor. Mr. Foster deserves to know the truth about the child he's being asked to raise. Emma's breath came in shallow gasps. She felt the room closing in on her, every eye searing into her as if she were a criminal. Her mind screamed in disbelief. Impossible. How could they fabricate this? Daniel leaned back in his chair, his smug smile spreading wider, Vanessa resting her head on his shoulder, as if victory were already theirs. Emma's lawyer shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is absurd. Mrs. Foster has never been unfaithful. The child was born during the marriage. We demand a court-appointed independent DNA test. This so-called evidence is nothing but a fabrication, conveniently timed to slander my client. The judge glanced between the two sides, her face unreadable. Mrs. Foster, do you wish to respond? Emma rose slowly, her legs trembling but her voice laced with fire. Yes, I do. She turned to face the courtroom, her eyes wet but defiant. Daniel Foster is the father of my child. I have never betrayed him. The only betrayal in this marriage has been his, parading his mistress in public while I lay in a hospital bed, carrying his son. Gasps echoed again. Emma gripped the stand tighter. This DNA claim is a lie. Another attempt to erase me, to erase my child, and to twist the truth so he can keep control. But I will not be erased. My son will not be erased. Her words sent ripples of murmurs through the room, even among the reporters. Some nodded, others frowned, but no one could deny the raw conviction in her voice. Daniel's lawyer smirked. Touching. But conviction does not outweigh science. Unless Mrs. Foster can prove otherwise, the results speak for themselves. Emma's lawyer slammed her hand on the table. We will prove otherwise. We demand the court reject this fraudulent report until a legitimate test is performed. If Mr. Foster is so certain, he should have nothing to fear. The judge nodded slowly, her gavel striking once. This court will order an official DNA test conducted by a state-approved facility. Until then, no assumptions will be made about the child's paternity. Emma sagged back into her chair, relief flooding her body, but it was thin, fragile. Daniel had planted a poisonous seed of doubt in the public's mind. Already she could imagine the headlines. Is Emma's baby really Daniel's? She glanced toward the gallery and saw reporters whispering excitedly, phones buzzing with live updates. Her stomach churned. The lie was already taking root. Alexander leaned close, his voice low but steady. He's desperate. That's why he's resorting to lies. Don't let this break you. Emma nodded weakly, though her heart ached. She thought of her baby lying in the NICU, so small, so innocent, already dragged into a war he never asked for. But just as the session ended and the judge dismissed the court for the day, Daniel leaned toward her table. His voice was a whisper meant only for her, laced with venom. Even if the test proves he's mine, Daniel murmured, his smile never fading, he'll carry my name, or he won't carry a name at all. Emma froze, realizing Daniel wasn't just attacking her reputation. He was threatening to erase her son's very identity. The courthouse emptied slowly, leaving Emma seated in silence. Reporters crowded the steps outside, their voices muffled through the heavy oak doors. Every headline would spin Daniel's lie into something bigger, uglier. She could already imagine the words splashed across the tabloids. Cheating wife, DNA dispute rocks foster scandal. Her body felt hollow, as if her soul had been wrung dry. She pressed a trembling hand against her abdomen, remembering the way her son had kicked inside her, reminding her she was never truly alone. But now doubt seeped into her veins, poisoning her thoughts. What if Daniel's lies worked? What if the world believed him? What if her son grew up haunted by whispers that he didn't belong? Emma stumbled into the hallway, the bright flash of cameras hitting her like daggers. Questions flew. Mrs. Foster, do you deny the DNA results? Is it true the baby isn't Daniel's? Are you hiding another man? Her knees nearly buckled, the noise overwhelming. Suddenly, Alexander was there, shielding her with his body, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders as he guided her toward the waiting car. His voice cut through the chaos. No more questions. Step aside. Inside the car, Emma collapsed against the seat, her sobs finally breaking free. I can't do this, Alexander. He's winning. He's taking everything. My reputation, my baby, my future. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not strong enough. Alexander's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, gently but firmly, he lifted her chin so her tear-filled eyes met his. Emma, he said, his voice low and steady. Listen to me. Daniel isn't winning. He's desperate. Desperate men use lies when they've run out of truth. You've survived everything he's thrown at you. Do not let this be the moment you break. Her voice cracked. But what if I lose my son? You won't, Alexander said. His eyes darkened with determination. Because you're not fighting alone anymore. You have me, and I have a plan. Emma blinked, her tears pausing. A plan? Alexander leaned back, his gaze fixed out the car window as the city lights streaked by. Daniel thrives on image. He hides behind money, power, and manipulation. But what he fears most is exposure. Real exposure. The kind that doesn't just dent his reputation, it destroys it. Emma wiped her face with the back of her hand. You're talking about the documents, the corruption. Alexander nodded once. Yes, I've been gathering evidence for months, long before you were caught in his web. Daniel Foster isn't just a cheating husband. He's a criminal. If the court of law won't see the truth of his betrayal as a husband, then the world will see the truth of his betrayal as a businessman. Emma's breath hitched. But if you expose him, won't he come after you? After us? Alexander gave a faint, humorless smile. He already has, but I've lived with worse threats. I lost my wife and child once because I trusted the wrong people. I won't make that mistake again. This time, I'll finish the fight. Emma studied him, her chest tightening. For the first time, she realized Alexander wasn't just protecting her out of kindness. He was driven by his own ghosts, his own need for redemption. But before she could respond, Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. It's from my security team, he muttered. There's been a breach at the hospital. Emma's blood turned to ice. The baby? Alexander gripped her hand tightly, his voice steady but urgent. We have to get there. Now. And as the car sped through the night, Emma's heart raced with dread, knowing Daniel's war wasn't just about lies anymore. He was coming for her son. The car screeched to a halt outside St. Mary's Hospital, tires skidding on wet pavement. Emma's heart pounded so violently she could hear it in her ears. She clutched Alexander's arm as they rushed through the glass doors, ignoring the startled receptionist who tried to stop them. The hallways were in chaos. Nurses ran in every direction, voices sharp with alarm. The NICU wing glowed red with flashing lights. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "No, no, please." A guard sprinted toward them. "Mr. Carter, thank God you're here." Someone breached the NICU. Security cameras caught two men entering through the maintenance corridor. Armed, Emma nearly collapsed. Alexander's grip tightened on her hand. His voice was steel. "Where's the baby?" The guard swallowed. They didn't reach him. Not yet, but they're still inside. Emma's knees gave way. She clutched the wall for balance, her body trembling. "They're trying to take him. Daniel, he sent them." Alexander turned, his expression fierce. "Stay with her," he ordered the guard, then strode toward the NICU doors. Emma shook her head violently. "No. Don't leave me here. I need to see my son." "Emma," Alexander said, his voice softer but still firm, "you can't run in there. If something happens, I don't care." Emma's voice cracked. "If they take him, I'd rather die fighting than sit here helpless." For a moment, Alexander stared at her, his jaw tight. Then he nodded. "Fine. But you stay behind me." Together, they pushed through the double doors into the NICU corridor. The air was thick with tension, the faint hum of machines in the background. At the far end, two masked men in black stood near the incubator, one fumbling with medical equipment, the other keeping lookout. Emma's heart shattered at the sight. Her tiny son lay inside the incubator, wires and tubes surrounding him, his breath shallow but steady. He was so small, so vulnerable, and now targeted by monsters. "Step away from the baby!" Alexander's voice thundered down the hall. The intruders froze. Then one of them pulled a gun. Emma gasped, clinging to Alexander's arm. "Stay back," the man barked, his voice muffled by the mask. "We don't want you. We want the kid." Emma's scream tore through the hall. "No, he's mine. You won't touch him," the man sneered. "Orders are orders, lady. Nothing personal." Alexander raised his hands slowly, his body shielding Emma. His tone was calm, deliberate. "Listen to me. You walk out of here now, you live. You take one more step toward that child, and I promise you, your boss won't be able to protect you from what comes next." The second intruder shifted nervously. "We didn't sign up for this, man." "A baby? This feels wrong." But the first man snarled, waving the gun. "Shut up, do your job." Emma's tears blurred her vision. She pressed her hand against the glass of the incubator, whispering to her son, "Hold on, baby. Mommy's here." Suddenly, hospital security flooded the corridor from behind, guns drawn. "Drop your weapon," one shouted. The armed intruder cursed, swinging his gun between Alexander and the guards. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then, bang. A single shot rang out. Emma screamed, collapsing against Alexander as the gunfire echoed through the sterile hall. And when the smoke cleared, someone lay bleeding on the floor. But Emma couldn't see who. The echo of the gunshot lingered in the corridor like thunder refusing to fade. Emma clung to Alexander's arm, her ears ringing, her body trembling violently. For a moment, all she could hear was the frantic beeping of her baby's monitor inside the incubator. Her eyes darted across the hall. One of the masked men lay sprawled on the floor, blood pooling beneath his shoulder. His gun skittered across the tiles. The second intruder froze, his hands raised, panic flashing in his eyes. Security swarmed in, pinning both men down within seconds. Emma sagged against the wall, her knees weak. Is it over?" Alexander's arm wrapped protectively around her. His voice was steady, but his gaze remained sharp. "For tonight, but this was just the beginning." Emma's eyes darted to the incubator. Nurses rushed to check her baby, adjusting the ventilator, soothing his tiny body. Relief washed through her as she saw his chest rise again. Fragile but steady, she pressed her palm against the glass, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe. Mommy's here." But the relief lasted only a moment before dread returned. She turned to Alexander, her voice trembling. "Daniel sent them. He tried to take my baby." Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing on the men being dragged away in handcuffs. "And he failed. But you're right. He won't stop. Not until he's stripped of every weapon he thinks he holds over you." As police arrived to question the intruders, Emma overheard snippets. Orders, Foster, make it look like an accident. Her stomach churned. Daniel hadn't just wanted custody, he wanted her baby erased. The officer approached Emma cautiously. "Mrs. Foster, do you wish to press charges?" Emma's voice shook, but her answer was clear. "Yes. I want the world to know what he's done." But as the words left her mouth, Alexander placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His eyes met hers, heavy with warning. "Think carefully. Daniel has influence. He'll twist this against you. We need to strike smarter, when the time is right." Emma's breath caught. She hated it. Hated the thought of waiting, of letting Daniel breathe free another day. But she also knew Alexander was right. Daniel never fought fair. As dawn crept through the hospital windows, exhaustion weighed on her body. She sat at her baby's side, watching him sleep, her heart aching with equal parts love and fear. Alexander entered quietly, holding a folder. His voice was low. "The men talked. They confirmed what we already knew. Daniel ordered this, but more importantly, he's moving money offshore. He's preparing to disappear." Emma's head snapped up. "Disappear? With what?" "With everything," Alexander said grimly. "His fortune, his company, and if he wins in court, your son." Emma's stomach twisted. She thought of Daniel smiling at the press conference, painting her as unfit while secretly plotting her destruction. Her grief turned to rage. "I won't let him," she whispered. "He's not taking my child. He's not taking anything from me ever again." Alexander's gaze softened for a moment. "That's the fire I've been waiting for. But you'll need more than fire, Emma. You'll need proof, and I know exactly where to find it." Emma's eyes widened. "Where?" Alexander leaned close, his words a whisper only for her. "Daniel keeps everything in one place, his private estate outside the city. Hidden files, ledgers, evidence he thinks no one can touch. If we get those, we can destroy him." Emma's pulse quickened. For the first time, victory felt possible. But terror lingered, because she knew what Daniel was capable of. And as she nodded, determination in her eyes, she didn't know Daniel was already on the phone, ordering his men to make sure she never left the hospital alive. The rain had returned by the time Alexander's car wound its way down the dark road, leading to Daniel Foster's private estate. The headlights cut through the mist, illuminating iron gates that loomed like prison bars. Emma sat in the back seat, her fingers laced tightly together, every muscle in her body wound with dread. She had left her fragile son under heavy guard at the hospital. Her heart torn in two. The thought of stepping away from him nearly broke her, but Alexander's words echoed in her mind. "If we get the evidence, we end Daniel for good." "Are you certain about this?" Emma asked, her voice shaking as the gates creaked open. "What if it's a trap?" Alexander's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror, steady and determined. "It is a trap. Daniel expects us. That's why we need to be faster, smarter. He thinks he's untouchable, but men like him always leave cracks. We'll find them." The car rolled onto the gravel driveway. The estate loomed ahead, a sprawling mansion of glass and steel glittering against the storm. Its beauty was hollow, a monument to Daniel's greed and corruption. As they stepped inside, the echo of their footsteps filled the cavernous foyer. Emma shivered. "This place feels empty." Alexander nodded. "Too empty." They moved cautiously through the halls, searching. In Daniel's private study, shelves of leather-bound books lined the walls, but Alexander's eyes went straight to the massive desk. He pulled open drawers, rifling through papers. Contracts, receipts, offshore accounts, it was all there, damning proof of Daniel's crimes. Emma hovered near the doorway, her pulse racing. For the first time, she felt the tide turning. This could ruin him. Alexander looked up, his expression grim but resolute. "It will." But before relief could settle, the sound of footsteps thundered down the hallway. Emma's stomach lurched. The study doors slammed shut, and Daniel himself appeared, flanked by 2 guards. He was immaculate as always, tailored suit, polished shoes, but his eyes burned with venom. Well, he drawled, his smile cold. "I wondered how long it would take for you to crawl into my den." Emma's breath caught. "Daniel," he raised a hand sharply. You don't get to say my name. You've humiliated me, dragged my reputation through the mud. And for what? A bastard child that isn't even mine?" Emma's face flushed with rage. "He is yours, Daniel, and you know it. The only bastard here is you." Daniel's smile twisted into a sneer. "Careful, Emma. You're on thin ice. One wrong step, and neither you nor your little protector will leave this place alive." Alexander stepped forward, his voice low, edged with steel. "We already have enough evidence to bury you. Your accounts, your offshore holdings, your bribes, it's all here. The world will finally see you for what you are." Daniel chuckled darkly. "Do you think I built this empire without preparing for rats? Go ahead, publish your little papers. I'll still have power, I'll still have money, and I'll still have the one thing you can't take from me." Emma frowned. "What?" Daniel's eyes glittered with malice. "Your son." Emma's blood turned cold. In an instant, one of the guards pulled a gun, aiming it directly at Alexander. The other advanced toward Emma, grabbing her arm. She struggled, screaming, but the guard's grip was iron. "Take her," Daniel ordered. "The baby will follow soon enough. Tonight, this ends." Emma's heart pounded as she was dragged toward the door, realizing too late that she had walked straight into Daniel's trap. The rain lashed against the windows of Daniel's estate as Emma's cries echoed down the cold marble halls. The guard's grip on her arm was like steel, dragging her toward the back exit where a black SUV idled in the storm. "Let me go," she screamed, her voice raw. "You can't do this. My son needs me." Daniel followed slowly, his expression calm, almost amused. "Your son doesn't need you, Emma. He needs power, stability, a future, things you'll never provide. But I will. Once you're gone, I'll reshape the story. The world will pity me, the devoted father forced to clean up his unstable wife's mess." Emma twisted against the guard, fury surging through her veins. "You don't care about him. You never did. He's just another possession to you, like your company, your cars, your money." Daniel's smirk widened. "Exactly, and I don't let anyone take what's mine." Back in the study, Alexander struggled against the second guard, who pinned him with brutal force. The barrel of a gun pressed into his ribs, but Alexander's eyes locked on Emma's, and in that single look, she saw a silent vow. "I will not let him win." The guard shoved her into the SUV, slamming the door behind her. Emma's chest heaved as panic clawed at her lungs. She pounded her fists against the window, but the rain drowned her cries. Daniel leaned in, his face inches from hers through the glass. "Don't worry, Emma. You'll see your son again, just not the way you want to." Her stomach turned. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, praying silently. "Please God, don't let him hurt my baby." The SUV roared to life, tires splashing through puddles as it sped into the night. Emma's heart raced with every passing mile, every flicker of headlights on the wet road. The guard in the front seat said nothing, his face hidden beneath a cap. Finally, the vehicle pulled into an abandoned warehouse on the city's edge. The air inside reeked of oil and rust. Emma was yanked out, shoved into a chair in the center of the cavernous space. Her wrists were bound, the rope biting into her skin. Daniel circled her like a predator. "You could have made this easy, Emma. You could have disappeared quietly. But you had to fight. You had to bring Carter into this. Now look where it's gotten you." Emma lifted her chin, defiance burning through her fear. "I may be tied up, Daniel, but I'm not beaten. You can destroy me, but you'll never destroy the truth." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He crouched in front of her, his voice venomous. "Truth is what I say it is. By tomorrow morning, the world will believe you abandoned your child. You'll be painted as the mother who couldn't handle the pressure, who ran away, and no one will question it." Emma's chest heaved, but she met his gaze without flinching. "You underestimate me. You always have." For the first time, Daniel's smirk faltered. Rage flickered in his eyes. He stood, snapping his fingers. The guard dragged in a small duffel bag, unzipping it to reveal stacks of cash and forged documents. "By the time this is over," Daniel said, his voice cold, "your name will vanish. Your son will carry mine, and you'll be nothing but a forgotten ghost." Emma's blood ran cold, but her resolve hardened. Deep inside, she knew Alexander would come. He had to. And as thunder roared overhead, a faint sound echoed outside the warehouse, the growl of an approaching engine. Alexander was already on his way. The storm raged outside the abandoned warehouse, lightning splitting the night sky. Inside, Emma sat bound to the chair, her wrists raw from the ropes. Fear clawed at her chest, but defiance burned in her eyes. She whispered to herself over and over, "Hold on, he's coming. He won't let this be the end." Daniel paced in front of her, the sound of his polished shoes echoing against the concrete floor. "You know what your problem is, Emma?" he sneered. You believe in heroes, but men like Carter, he's no savior. He's just another fool who thinks he can outsmart me. And fools always lose. Suddenly, headlights cut through the rain outside. Engines roared. The warehouse doors shook violently as vehicles skidded to a halt. Daniel's smug smile faltered. The next moment, the doors burst open. Alexander stormed in with a team of private security, their weapons drawn, their movements precise. His coat was soaked from the rain, but his eyes blazed like fire. "Let her go, Daniel," Alexander commanded, his voice echoing across the vast chamber. Daniel barked a laugh, masking the fear creeping into his tone. "You think barging in here with your men makes you the hero? You forget, I own the narrative. By tomorrow the world will think Emma abandoned her child and ran off with you. You'll both be disgraced." Alexander stepped closer, his presence commanding. "Not tomorrow, not ever, because tonight the world sees the real Daniel Foster." With a signal, one of Alexander's men projected images onto the warehouse wall. Photographs, ledgers, bank transfers, evidence of Daniel's corruption, his bribes, his offshore accounts, proof he thought was hidden forever. Emma's eyes widened as the images flickered across the wall. This wasn't just evidence, it was his entire empire unraveling before him. Reporters flooded in behind Alexander, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Alexander had planned this perfectly. Not just a rescue, but a public reckoning. Daniel's face strained of color. What is this?" Alexander's voice thundered. "The truth. You ordered attacks on Emma, tried to erase her, tried to steal her child, and now the world will watch you lose everything." Emma's heart soared as she watched Daniel stumble backward, his lies collapsing under the weight of undeniable proof. For the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Desperate, Daniel pulled a gun from his jacket, pointing it wildly between Emma and Alexander. Gasps erupted from the reporters, cameras clicking faster. "You think you've won," Daniel shouted, his voice cracking. "I'll never let you take him from me. That child is mine." Emma's voice rang out, steady and strong. "No, Daniel, he's not yours. He never was. He belongs to love, not possession. And that's something you'll never understand." The words cut deeper than any weapon. Daniel's hands shook, the gun wavering. Alexander's men surrounded him, their weapons trained. "Drop it, Foster," Alexander ordered. For a tense moment, the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Then Daniel roared in rage, raising the gun. A shot rang out. Emma flinched, her scream tearing through the air. The gun clattered to the ground. Daniel fell to his knees, his face twisted with shock as the security team closed in. Alexander rushed to Emma, untying her ropes, pulling her into his arms. She sobbed against his chest, overwhelmed by relief and terror. But even as Daniel was dragged out in handcuffs, his voice echoed through the warehouse. "This isn't over. You'll never erase me. The world will still remember Daniel Foster." And as the cameras flashed and the storm raged, Emma realized the fight wasn't truly finished. The final battle for her son's future was still to come. The storm had passed by the time Emma returned to the hospital. Dawn painted the sky in shades of pale gold, as if the world itself was cleansing away the night of violence and lies. Her body still ached, her mind still reeled, but her heart carried something it hadn't in months: hope. She walked into the NICU, Alexander at her side. There, in the incubator, her tiny son stirred, his fragile chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. Emma pressed her palm against the glass, her eyes brimming with tears. "We made it, sweetheart," she whispered. "We survived." News of Daniel's downfall had already swept across the city. Footage of his arrest filled every television screen, every headline. The mighty Daniel Foster, the man who once believed himself untouchable, was now branded a criminal, exposed before the entire world. His corruption, his violence, his betrayal of both wife and child, all laid bare. And for once, Emma wasn't the one being judged. She was the survivor. Later that day, the courtroom reconvened. Daniel sat shackled between two guards, his once pristine suit rumpled, his face pale with fury. The judge's gavel struck, silencing the room. After reviewing the evidence presented, including Mr. Foster's criminal activities and attempts to harm both his wife and child, this court rules in favor of Mrs. Emma Foster. Full custody of the child is hereby granted to the mother. Mr. Foster is stripped of parental rights effective immediately. The gavel slammed one final time. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. She turned to Alexander, her voice breaking. "It's over. We won." He gave a rare smile, warm and steady. "No, Emma, you won. You fought, you endured, and you protected your son. Today, you reclaimed your life." Reporters rushed forward as Emma stepped out of the courthouse, microphones and cameras flashing. For the first time, she didn't shy away. She stood tall, holding her son in her arms, a soft blanket cradling his tiny frame. "Mrs. Foster, do you have a statement?" one shouted. Emma lifted her chin, her voice clear and unwavering. "Yes. To every woman who has been silenced, to every mother who has been told she isn't enough, this is for you. No amount of money, power, or lies can erase the truth. We are stronger than we know, and we will rise." The crowd erupted in applause, cameras capturing the moment, not as scandal, but as triumph. As the sun climbed higher, Emma and Alexander returned to the Carter estate. It no longer felt like someone else's home. It felt like sanctuary. She stood in the garden, her baby nestled against her chest, breathing in the fresh air. For the first time, peace touched her soul. Alexander joined her, his gaze soft as he watched her sway gently with the child. "He's strong," Alexander said, "just like his mother." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "And he'll grow up knowing he was wanted, loved, and fought for." Silence stretched between them, comfortable and warm. Then Emma whispered, almost to herself, "He won't carry Foster's name. He'll carry Carter, a name that means strength, a name that means hope." Alexander's eyes softened, and for a brief moment Emma saw something deeper there, something that promised a future built not on betrayal, but on trust and healing. She kissed her son's forehead, her voice steady. "We're free now. This is our beginning." And as the sun bathed them in light, Emma knew the storm was finally over, and a new chapter had just begun. The NICU glowed softly in the dim light of early dawn. Emma sat beside the incubator, her hand pressed against the glass as her son's tiny chest rose and fell with mechanical rhythm. Each breath was a miracle, each pause a terror. Her body was weak, her spirit frayed, but her eyes never left her child. Alexander stood quietly behind her, his coat draped over her shoulders. He had stayed through the night, refusing to leave, even when exhaustion etched lines across his face. Emma finally turned, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. You could walk away right now." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything. And I won't let it happen to you. Not while I still breathe." Tears welled in her eyes. No man had ever spoken to her with such certainty, such loyalty. She whispered, almost afraid of her own words, "I thought love was just a lie Daniel told me, but maybe I was wrong." Days passed, and her son grew stronger. Emma's health returned slowly, each step in the hospital corridor steadier than the last. Through it all, Alexander remained at her side, not just as protector, but as friend, confidant, and something Emma had never dared hope for again. A partner. One evening, after weeks of endless fear and fragile hope, Alexander led her to the hospital's rooftop garden. The city lights twinkled below, the night air crisp and cool. Emma held her son, swaddled and sleeping, close to her chest. "Emma," Alexander began, his voice steady but carrying an unfamiliar tremor. "When I first found you in the rain, I thought I was just saving a life. But the truth is, you saved mine. You reminded me that love, even after loss, is possible." Emma's breath caught as Alexander sank to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside glimmered a simple, elegant ring. "Marry me," he said softly. "Not because you need saving, but because you are the strongest woman I've ever known. And I want to spend my life protecting that strength, walking beside you and raising him, not as Foster's child, but as ours." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. For years she had known only betrayal and abandonment. Now, here was a man offering not pity, but partnership. She whispered through sobs, "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Alexander rose, slipping the ring onto her finger, then wrapping his arms around both Emma and her son. For the first time in months, Emma felt whole. As the wind whispered through the rooftop garden, Emma looked at her sleeping child and then at the man who had become her anchor. "He won't carry Foster's name," she said firmly. "He'll carry Carter, a name built on love, not lies." Alexander kissed her forehead. "Then tonight is not just survival, it's the beginning of our family." And as the city lights shimmered below, Emma knew the storm had finally passed. Not only had she won back her life, but she had found a love strong enough to heal every scar. So that's how our story comes to a close. My dear friends, you're still here with me, aren't you? If you've stayed until this very moment, it means something inside this story touched your heart in a way that words alone cannot explain. Emma's journey reminds us that even in betrayal, loss, and darkness, we are never truly broken, because as long as we breathe, we can rise again. The Stoics used to say, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality," Seneca. Emma feared she would lose everything, yet by facing reality with courage, she found her strength and reclaimed her life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's the truth for all of us. Pain is inevitable, but suffering can be transformed into healing when we choose resilience. So maybe this story wasn't just about Emma, it was about you too. About all of us. If her fight lit even the smallest spark of strength in your heart tonight, don't let it fade. Share this with someone who needs hope, hit like if it moved you, and subscribe so we can keep walking this road together. Because none of us fight alone.